coming up on the podcast.
And this is what I mean, like this other book, which I can't pull out now because it's down the bottom of the stack, looks really similar to this. The Dead Giveaway should have been the different author name, but I didn't have the book with me. But you can totally see why I got confused with the other book, The Unexpected Return of Josephine Fox.
You're listening to the Book Nerd Podcast, a virtual book club for readers of mystery, thriller and suspense novels. Twice a month I will bring you a short discussion about what makes a great thriller novel, as well as latest reads over a cup of tea. And who am I? I'm your host, cozy mystery writer and thriller author Amelia D. Hay.
Hello book lovers. Just like the previous book haul on this podcast, I've been saving up books in piles in the floor of my office from shopping trips between October 2019 and March 2020, when my physical book buying ban began. Since then, I've fallen off the bandwagon and forgot about my book buying ban. As the title suggests, all the books in this haul feature female amateur sleuths who are amateurs and not professional detectives or police officers. For the sake of clarity, I do not include characters like Eve Dallas from the In Death series. And I've managed to stop myself from reading these books before I haul them for you. So hopefully this will stop me from giving away any spoilers. Fingers crossed. This next mystery-related piece of entertainment is not necessarily new, but it's new to me. The other day I downloaded Clue or Cluedo, depending upon where you are in the world, on my Nintendo Switch Lite. Cluedo for Switch is great as a single player versus the AI, but not so great on the two-player mode, especially if the second player has not purchased the game. My husband and I tried the two-player version and played it together on my Switch Lite. However, in the end, he ended up purchasing the base game for Cluedo at, I think it was $14.99, and upgrading the game by purchasing the VIP pass for an extra $9.99 to get the other variations. At present, I'm loving this more than Animal Crossing, but I have recently reset my island and got my dream scenario on the first try. I think what's making me love Animal Crossing this time around is I didn't pressure myself to create a theme. I'm doing a mixture of Normcore and Alice in Wonderland because my island is called Wonderland. I know that's very unoriginal, and there's probably a lot of islands called Wonderland, but I'm doing my own. And I want to make it so it's easy to walk around and it's not cluttered, because I hate clutter. You would never know that from my office though. Just a quick disclaimer, all of the books in this haul were purchased by me with my own money and not gifted to me by publishers, publicists or agents. And all opinions are my own. One final note, my virtual assistant sourced all of my book descriptions off the Australian Amazon store. I realised that a few of the book descriptions were difficult to read, so I went on the UK store and I've noticed some of them were different. So they're sourced from two different sources. And the other thing I want to point out is I don't actually know any of these authors. And I think it's worth pointing out because I'm an author myself, so I'm not using this podcast to shout out my friends. These are genuinely books I wanted to purchase. I like being honest like this because, not that I think I'm an influencer in any way, but because I have a podcast, I do feel like it's important for me to point out to you that I'm not persuaded by all of these other companies to read books, that this is genuinely me buying books that I thought were interesting and books that I wanted to read. Like, I don't feel pressured to read books. There's nothing wrong with book bloggers reading books and giving reviews and sharing honest reviews, because I do that. I send my books off to book bloggers and they will share an honest review on their website. As an author, I appreciate that and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not something I particularly do. And I think it's worth pointing out whether you do this or not. Not that it means that you're biased, it just means that an author has sent you the book with the purpose of writing a review. I mean, there's nothing wrong with transparency. Well, at least I don't think so anyway. The first book in this haul is Secrets at St. Bride's by Debbie Young. This book is the first novel in the Staff Room at St. Bride's series. I purchased this novel because it was written by an independently published author and it is in a genre I love, and the cover art is beautiful. On top of that, it's a cozy mystery. And something else that's worth mentioning is Secrets at St. Bride's was shortlisted for the Selfies Award in 2020. For those of you who are not aware, the Selfies Award is given to the best independently published adult fiction in the UK. So here's a bit about the book. When James Lalonde takes a job at a quirky English girls' boarding school, she believes she's found the perfect escape route from her controlling boyfriend, until she discovers the rest of the staff are hiding sinister secrets. Even McBee, the school cat, is leading a double life. Tucked away in the school's beautiful private estate in the Cotswolds, can Gemma stay safe and build a new independent future? With a little help from her new friends, including some worldly wise pupils, she's going to give it her best shot. This book is perfect for anyone who grew up hooked on the Chalet School, Mallory Towers, St. Clair's, and other classic boarding school stories. And I have a funny feeling I just probably butchered most of those names. But as you can see, the cover is extremely beautiful, and if you're listening to this on the podcast, you're listening to me going, why talk about the cover? It's audio only. The next novel in this haul is a historical mystery called The Unexpected Return of Josephine Fox by Claire Greddage. I purchased this novel in my local W.H. Smith, thinking this was a part of another series, but it's by a different author. Honestly, I thought this book was a part of the Midfield Murders series, and as you can see by the cover art, it has a very similar cover design to that series. Obviously, the publishers are trying to market this book to those readers, and it's clearly worked. But I can't complain too much because I purchased this novel at half price for $3.99. By the way, The Unexpected Return of Josephine Fox is a debut novel, so here's a bit about the book. Joe arrives the day after the Luftwaffe have bombed the town. The local pub, the Cricketers Arms, has been completely destroyed, and rescue teams are searching for the remains of 7 people known to have been in the pub at the time the bomb hit. They are shocked, however, to uncover 8 bodies, not 7. The 8th unidentified body is that of a teenage girl whom no one in the town claims to know. Who is she? How did she get there? But most importantly, who killed her? Teaming up with a local coroner and old friend Bram Nash, Jo sets out to establish the identity of the girl and solve the riddle of her death. In doing so, she also uncovers her own personal mystery. After reading that book description out, I definitely don't feel ripped off, because this book feels like it's going to be an interesting read, and possibly in the same vein as those books. So they are marketing it correctly. They're not just sort of trying to take advantage of a popular genre. This is legitimately in that genre. And this is the price, just in case you were looking for evidence that I purchased this. I like to take these little round stickers off. I didn't actually take the Richard and Judy sticker off the front title because I think it's quite stuck there and I don't particularly want to rip the cover. But this is evidence that it cost me $3.99. I'm quite happy with this. And I really like the gold embossing on this. It's just incredibly beautiful. If you are interested in seeing the images for the front covers for these books, then I highly recommend going over to my website and checking out the very long blog post. And I may eventually share these images over on the social media account associated with the Book Nerd podcast. But the URL for the blog post is author.adhay.com/TBN007. Results of Murder by T.P. Fielden is the second book in the Miss Dumont mystery series. The protagonist, Miss Dumont, is a reporter for the local rag, the Riviera Express, and that's what lured me into this series, along with the cover design. I love this vector image or illustration style of cover, which is typical of the cozy mystery genre. Another reason why I purchased this book is I already have book 1 on my shelf, so here's a bit about the book. Death stalks the beaches of Devon. With its pale aquamarine waters and golden sands, the shoreline at Temple Riggs was a sight to behold, but an unidentifiable body is found there one morning in the most beautiful beach in Devon is turned into a crime scene. For Mr. Moore, ferocious defender of free speech, champion of the truth, and ace newspaper woman for the Riviera Express, this is a case of paramount interest and the perfect introduction for her young recruit, Valentine Waterford, even if their meddling is to the immense irritation of local copper Inspector Topham. Soon Mr. Moore and Valentine are deep in the investigation. Why can no one identify the body, and why does Topham suspect murder? And when a second death occurs, can the two possibly be connected? I must admit, reading some of these book descriptions is really hard because I can tell when they copyright, this is essentially copywriting, and I can tell when they did the copywriting for the book description that they didn't say it out loud because it's very difficult to read and there's run-on sentences, and I just wish they made it simple, but they didn't. The other thing is I actually really like buying books in a series, and you can probably tell based on my buying habits because the next book in the series just happens to be book 3. The next book in this haul is A Quarter Past Dead, which is the 3rd book in the Mr. More mystery series. Here's a bit about the book. Murder can strike at any hour. It's the late 1950s in tranquil Temple Riggs. For holidaymakers, it's a glorious time of breathtaking scenery, picnics on the beach, and flocks of tourists on their summertime holidays. But for Miss Judy Demore, this is a trifle dull. As a reporter for the local rag, the Riviera Express, she needs scandal and intrigue, and one morning as the clock strikes the quarter hour, she gets it. A woman has been shot dead in one of the upmarket holiday huts. The toffee-nosed rival hotelier next door is rubbing his hands with glee, and Judy and her trusty Herbert are off like a shot to survey the scene of the crime. But no one can tell her who the dead girl is, and there's no clear motive. To have a story to write, Judy must solve the case, and the intrepid Mr. More will leave no pebble unturned until the truth is out. While roaming around St. Pancras before the lockdown, back at the end of 2019, I purchased Blood of an Englishman by MC Beaton at a bookstore called, I think it's Hatchett's. For those of you who are not aware, the investment fund Elliott Advisors, who owns Waterstones and Hatchett's, has acquired Barnes & Noble. Back to the book haul. This book is the 25th book in the Agatha Raisin series. My love of this series has reached the point where if I see a story in the series and I love the title, then I'll end up putting it in my shopping cart. I can't help myself. In the next episode of the Book Nerd podcast, I will discuss the Agatha Raisin novels versus the television series. But here's a bit about the book. Even though Agatha Raisin loathes Christmas panto, her friend Mrs. Bloxby, the vicar's wife, has persuaded her to support the local Amdram Society in their festive offering. Stifling a yawn at the production of Babes in the Wood, Agatha watches the baker playing an org strut and threaten on stage until a trapdoor opens, followed by a scream and then silence. Surely this wasn't the way the scene was rehearsed. When it turns out the local baker had been murdered, most horribly, Agatha puts her team of detectives on the case, and they soon discover more feuds and temperamental behaviour in amateur dramatics than in a professional stage show, and face more danger as Agatha and her team get too close to the killer. I love these covers, they're incredibly cute. I have to admit, the books aren't really cozy mystery, they're probably more amateur sleuth private investigator mysteries than cozy. I guess because of the character of Agatha, but I'm spoiling the next podcast episode. I need to stick to my script. Dishing the Dirt by MC Beaton is book 26 in the Agatha Raisin series. What prompted me to purchase this was the title. I didn't even read the blurb. In saying that, here's a bit about the book. A therapist had moved into the village of Carsley, and Agatha Raisin hates her. Not only was this therapist Jill Davant romancing Agatha's ex-husband, but she had dug up details of Agatha's slum background. Added to that, Jill was counselling a woman called Gwen Simple from Winter Parva, and Agatha family believed Gwen to have assisted her son in some grisly murders. However, Agatha has no proof that Gwen had done so. A resentment is different from a dislike and needs to be shared, so as the friendship between James and Jill grows stronger, the more Agatha does to try and find out all she can about her. When Jill is found strangled to death in her office 2 days later, Agatha finds herself under suspicion and must fight to clear her name. Next is Agatha Raisin and the Deadbringer by MC Beaton. This book is the 29th installment in this series. Here's a bit about the book. The idyllic Cotswolds village of Thirk Magna is best known for the medieval church of St. Ethelred and its bells, which are the pride and glory of the whole community. As the bell ringers get ready for the visit of the dashing Bishop Peter Salver Hinckley, the whole village is thrown into a frenzy. Meanwhile, Agatha convinces one of the bell ringers, the charming lawyer Julian Brodie, to hire her to investigate the mystery of the bishop's ex-fiancée, a local heiress, Jennifer Toynbee, who went missing years ago and whose body was never found. Meanwhile, the bodies in the village just keep on piling up. The corpse of Larry Jensen, a local policeman, is discovered in the crypt. Millicent Dupin, one of a pair of bell-ringing identical twins, is murdered near the church. And Terry Fletcher, a journalist and briefly Agatha's lover, is found dead in her sitting room. Agatha widens her investigation, and very soon her main suspect is the handsome bishop himself. But could he really be behind this series of violent killings? Or is it someone who wants to bring him and his reputation down? One of the things I find really annoying about some of these books is people don't consider how names are pronounced or how hard it can be to pronounce names, especially if you're talking about a book. Because, like, people with double hyphens, weirdly pronounced names, it's just, like, this isn't fantasy, it's not really necessary. But anyway, I'm clearly grumpy today because it's quite hot and I'm sweating under the lights and it's not fun. As you probably guessed, the next book in the series is Beating About the Bush by M.C. Beaton. I promise this is the last Agatha Raisin novel in this haul. This 13th installment in the series was purchased in hardback from Hatchard's in St. Pancras. Honestly, I love hardback novels. They look so incredibly beautiful, and this one is no exception. And just for those of you who are curious, I purchased these 4 books on the same day. So here's a bit about the book. When private detective Agatha Raisin comes across a severed leg in a roadside hedge, it looks like she is about to become involved in a particularly gruesome murder. Looks, however, can be deceiving, as Agatha discovers she is employed to investigate a case of industrial espionage at a factory where nothing is quite what it seems. The factory mystery soon turns to murder, and a bad-tempered donkey turns Agatha into a national celebrity before bringing her ridicule and shame. To add to her woes, Agatha finds herself grappling with growing feelings for her friend and occasional lover, Sir Charles Fraith. Then, as a possible solution to the factory murder unfolds, her own life is thrown into deadly peril. Will Agatha get her man at last, or will the killer get her first? And what's funny about this hardback is on the front cover, you can see a donkey is sort of running away from what looks like a farm. But that's what it looks like to me. The cover's really cute. Sail Away by Celia Imrie is a standalone women's detective fiction novel. Judging by the reviews, I think some readers expected this to be women's fiction or a light-hearted read, and thus these sentiments were reflected in their rating of the book on Amazon. I believe this occurred because the author writes women's fiction and her standalone novels are either humorous women's fiction or sit within the cozy mystery genre. Based on the blurb at the back of the book, the story feels a bit cozy to me, but I'll soon find out. So here's a bit about the book. The phone hasn't rung for months. Susie Marshall is discovering that work can be sluggish for an actress over 60, even for the star of a wildly popular 1980s TV series. So when her agent offers her the plum role of Lady Barkwell in The Importance of Being Earnest in Zurich, it seems like a godsend, until that is, the play is abruptly cancelled under suspicious circumstances, and Susie is forced to take a job on a cruise ship to get home. Meanwhile, Amanda Herbert finds herself homeless in rainy Clapham. The purchase of her new apartment has fallen through, and her children are absorbed in their own dramas. Then she spots an advertisement for an Atlantic cruise and realizes that a few weeks on board would tie her over and save her money until her housing situation is resolved. As the two women set sail on a new adventure, neither can possibly predict the questionable characters and strange dealings they will encounter, nor the unexpected rewards they will reap, vividly evoking the old world glamour of cruise ship and the complex politics of its staff quarters. waters. Sail Away is at once a hilarious romp and a thrilling adventure. Bright Young Dead by Jessica Fellowes is the second book in the Midfield Murders mystery series, and you can find this novel and the series in the historical mystery genre. Since I purchased this book, it's been renamed The Midfield Affair. This new name is more appropriate for the series than this original name that you can see on the cover. So here's a bit about the book. As the glamour of bright young things crashes into the world of the Midfield sisters, their maid Louisa Cannon finds herself at the scene of a gripping murder mystery. Meets the bright young things, the rabble-rousing hedonist of the 1920s whose treasure hunts were a media obsession. One such game takes place at the 18th birthday party of Pamela Mitford, but ends in tragedy as cruel, charismatic Adrian Curtis is pushed to his death from the church neighbouring the Mitford home. The police quickly identify the killer as maid Dulcie, but Louisa Cannon, chaperone to the Midfield girls and a former criminal herself, believes Dulcie to be innocent and sets out to clear the girls' names, all while the real killer may only be steps away. And this is what I mean, like this other book, which I can't pull out now because it's down the bottom of the stack, looks really similar to this. The Dead Giveaway should have been the different author name, but I didn't have the book with me. I purchased these books at 2 different times, but you can totally see why I got confused with the other book by The Unexpected Return of Josephine Fox. I think that's what it's called, possibly. The last book in this haul is The Midfield Scandal by Jessica Fellowes, and it's the third novel in the Midfield Murders mystery series. Just like the other two books, this novel is a historical mystery set in the 1920s. Here's a bit about the book. The year is 1928, and after the death of a maid at a glamorous society party, fortune heir Brian Guinness seizes life and proposes to 18-year-old Diana, the most beautiful of the 6 Midfield sisters. The maid's death is ruled an accident, and the newlyweds put it behind them to begin a whirlwind life zipping between London's Mayfair, chic Paris, and hedonistic Berlin. Accompanying Diana as her lady's maid is Louisa Cannon, as well as friends, family, and hangers-on from Nancy Mitford to Evelyn Waugh. When a second victim is found in Paris 3 years later, Louisa begins to see links with the death of the maid. Now she must convince the Midfield sisters that a murderer could be within their midst, all while shadows darken across Europe and within the heart of Diana Mitford herself. So this is The Midfield Scandal. I believe the other two books had gold embossing on the front, and this is the first one that has like a silver embossing, and I have to admit it does look better against this illustrated backdrop with the Eiffel Tower. That concludes this female amateur sleuths book haul. If you like watching or listening to book hauls, I have others just like this. I'll list these episodes in the show notes in your favourite podcasting app and in the description for the video and over on my blog post. As always, I have an important question for you. Do you like book hauls devoted to an entire subgenre or category? Let me know by sharing your thoughts in the comments section on the blog post or below the video on YouTube. Thanks for listening and happy reading, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Book Nerd Podcast. If you're new to this podcast or want to be notified about more episodes just like this, then click the subscribe button right now. You can find episode show notes and lots more information at ameliadhay.com/book-nerd. I'm your host, Amelia D. Hay, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time for another episode. Happy reading, everybody.